Good morning, BGC Coffee Festival. My name is Keo Kosha and I am your festival director. I thank you guys all for coming out this morning. Up first, we have a woman who works with a company called Calzada. Very few things bring me as much joy as to see where Calzada has gone and where they're going. So with that, I would like to welcome from Calzada Coffee, Tere. Hi, Tere. Please have a seat over here. And then up next, from Curve Coffee Roasters, we have Rafael de la Cruz. Here, give a hand for Rafael. And finally, a face which all of you have been looking at for a whole day already. He runs a cafe called El Union Coffee. And in recent years, they've become very much not just a roastery and a cafe, but also they've been working into its coffee production. And to talk a bit about it, a little bit about that, I'd like to welcome Kiro Kosha of El Union Coffee, my brother. All right, guys. Good morning. How was your day one at Coffee Festival?
Caffeinated already.
Caffeinated.
I started with a blend of local coffee from Bodega of Fine Robusta and Excelsa. So it's been good so far.
All right. So why don't we start with this? Why don't we go one by one? And why don't you explain what your job is so that the people here who maybe don't know you or don't know what coffee production really is can kind of get a little picture into the different roles and different jobs in coffee production. So Tara, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So I am currently I don't even know what I do anymore. On paper, I'm the country director of Calzada. So basically what I do is I stay at the farms. We organize farmers and farmer organizations. We build the infrastructure within the community. We train them from seed to post-harvest processing. We bring in the technical knowledge, we bring in the facility, and then we buy the produce of the farmers. And then we market that locally and internationally. So basically, all of that are my roles. So to get all of that moving, I do the day-to-day.
It's good that you use the S. You know that those are different roles. You're doing them all. All right, Raf.
So hi, I'm Raf from Curve Coffee Collaborator. So I'm the roastery head. Basically, we deal with the production of the roasted coffee beans. But aside from that, we also coordinate with different farmers, such as similar with Tere, that we coordinate with different cooperatives, different farming communities, and we actually support them also. We help them with from the seed and up to the post-harvest processing. We provide them with equipment, training, seminars, and we also buy from them, of course. We also want to support these communities. So basically, we coordinate what we get from the farmers, and of course, we roast it so that we can all distribute it to the people who enjoy Philippine coffee. Yeah.
And Kiddo?
Hello everyone, I'm Kiddo from San Juan, La Union. We run El Union Coffee. I think most of you have maybe heard of us as a specialty coffee company and roasting company. Aside from that, during the pandemic, I guess our life in the farming world, that kind of blossomed for us during the pandemic, almost the way that gardening blossomed for everyone.
Or sourdough.
Right, or sourdough. It started with, but what I do in coffee production is kind of similar to what the others are doing. But I guess our context is it's a buyer-initiated thing. Like, it started with us coming in as a buyer, looking for coffee to buy, and seeing a lot of holes in the production chain, and trying to establish those links. So taking a business development role in a more rural development and community development context in the coffee farm. So as a buyer, saying that we have these needs, seeing farms that have the potential, even have trees and crops, but don't have the organization in place to get that coffee to a sellable place. And so that's kind of our job, to kind of coach them. I'm sure it overlaps with a lot of what they're doing, and we can learn and see kind of the common the common areas. But that's really what I do. Like in El Union, I'm the main pioneer, I guess. Any new ground that needs to be explored and broken into. And as of now, that looks like and I think I would say that's the next 10 years of the company, is expanding coffee production in the province as a priority, but also in surrounding areas in the north.
So maybe you can go one by one, like whoever's ready to talk about it first, really. Let's do that. What do you guys see as the vision, as the goal for Philippine coffee? What does a great industry, a great situation for us look like? Is that export? Is it like cooperation throughout Asia? What do you see as kind of 5-10 years down the line? Because we've all been doing this a while now. I think it's at least 5 years for everyone here. For me, kiddo, it's 10 already. It's been a while. We've been in professional coffee, and we've seen leaps. We've seen great strides already. But yeah, if you're looking at the next 5 years, how do we double, triple the progress we've made, and what does that look like?
I'm gonna go ahead.
Go
first.
ahead.
So right now, we are importing about 60% of our consumption.
You mean the Philippines
The
as a whole?
Philippines
Yeah.
is importing 60% of our coffee consumption, and that's a lot for a coffee-producing country. So for me personally, what I really want to see in the next 5 or even 10 years, KO, is for us to be importing less and producing more. And to do that, like you said, we've been doing this for over almost 10 years now. And I don't see that significant increase in production. But going around the Philippines, we have so much land. The thing is agriculture a sustainable business? Is it a sustainable livelihood for farmers and even to us that are in the consumer side of the business? So I think if we focus on coffee production as a sustainable business, as an industry, I think we will get there.
I think what you're alluding to is that what we know as coffee production, like the work period, all centers around harvest, right? Which is a small, window of the year, maybe a third of the year, a fourth of the year, depending on where you are. And so you're saying that kind of affects the sustainability aspect of coffee, and so that's one of the main things that hopefully we can figure out. Yeah. All right, Graf.
So for me, I think it's similar with Tere because, again, we import at around 60% of our coffee here in the Philippines. But of course, for the past few years, we also have initiatives from different organizations, from different government agencies. We actually have this Philippine Coffee Roadmap wherein our goal is to increase our coffee production by 240,000 metric tons by 2022.
What are we at now?
24,000.
Oh my God.
So, see, we're at 10% of our goal for 2022. And I think a lot of the contributing factor for this slow progress is, of course, our commitment also to provide proper training, proper equipment, proper processing facilities. And of course, one of the biggest things is climate change, because I think one of the reasons our production is very low for the past 2 years is because of changing weathers every day, every week. Usually we have this area that would have sunlight every day for a week. Now only once a day, once in 2 weeks. So it's very difficult for us to have that progress when we have these external factors that we somehow can control, but we can do something about it. So I think for the next 5 to 10 years, our focus again is sustainable coffee production, because we also have to be sustainable in terms of quality, workforce. I think it's important that we also we prioritize our farmers, our processors, is because if we don't have them, who will process our coffees? Who will farm our coffees? Who will produce the coffees that we have? So I think that should be the focus of the next 5 to 10 years, is how to develop a sustainable system for coffee production.
I think one of the things that we like to do as a company is to start and then involve ourselves completely in an enterprise, especially if we see a need. And I think that it's easy to look at the kind of the global forces like climate change and climate justice and deforestation and food security and feel a little helpless. And I think that as El Union, what we're trying to do and what we appreciate platforms like this for is that we get to say that, hey, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We can start in whatever big or small way. So like even though we're getting into coffee producing, we're not talking about crazy numbers. Like I'm not saying that our company is making massive strides in the coffee production. We're not adding 10% to that number, even as with all, and that's already my full-time job these days, is working with communities and trying to solve those problems. But I guess our statement as a company is that let's involve ourselves. Let's get our feet wet already. Let's step into the water and not wait for somebody else to do it. We also take quite a critical voice from a socio-economic and social-political standpoint. We've learned that wearing our heart on our sleeve appeals to our audience of buyers. And if we can appeal to more buyers, that's more viable for producers. And so then we create this virtuous local cycle, or like what the economist Kate Rayworth calls a donut speaking to the other wall of the donut. We're localizing the economy, right? We're localizing coffee trade slowly and making it, events like these make it it puts it on the pulse, right? It puts it in the center of the cultural conversation around specialty food. So I think that as El Union, we just want to we want to access those opportunities, share that access with the people involved. So in this case, farm producers, and then also show our audience who are buyers that you can get involved too, and you can support independence everywhere because we're all on the same team, right? We're all in the same space and trying to do the same thing. So I hope that answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Involvement, like we're the ones we're waiting for. It sounds idealistic and very pep squad, but if we're not gonna try and grow more coffee, who's gonna bleep and do it, right?
That's true, absolutely true. So what are the steps there? Because I run a co-working space, right? HoneycombManila is a co-working space. And as part of our culture, everybody drinks great coffee. It's bottomless, right? So you just go to a coffee bar, you order a coffee, and that's it. You drink great coffees all the time. As a result, we've had to move into roasting our own coffees and buying our own greens to make that sustainable on our end without it having to have too much of an impact on everyone else, really. We started out buying a lot of Philippine coffees and roasting them. And about 4 months ago, we just couldn't buy it anymore, right? And these guys know, I called you guys up and it's like, hey, we're having a coffee festival 2 months ago, right? Having a coffee festival, can you guys do a booth? And the answer is always, we have no green. We have no coffee. We don't know what we're gonna sell you. What's going on, guys? And how do we kind of solve for this situation where, harvest is kind of starting around now until the end of the year, January, and then all that green is gone by June. How do we cross that bridge of that remaining 4 months where we need more Philippine coffee?
Again, from me as a retailer, and I think for our audience, I think we're speaking mainly to a retail community, right? People who buy specialty coffee almost on a daily basis for many of us, right? Is to keep making that vote for Philippine coffee and let retailers know that this is what we want, right? And support those that are doing it well. Support those that are doing it transparently, right? And I think that that's how we can start because the base needs to stabilize. Right, and it's this kind.
What does that mean?
Okay, the base of production needs to be stable. That's why we're running out of coffee in June, is because harvest does begin in the burr months like September, October. But if your cafe is doing well, you're probably going to be undersupplied, and then you need to have other origins on offer. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I love imported coffees. I think they will always be part of the vernacular. But we've just got to get our feet wet. We have to start asking for it, supporting it actively as a community, saying we want more Philippine coffee. we've found that that buyer initiated, like the buyer appetite, does have an impact on the farm level at the end of the day. It's if people want it, like and then if we can connect the gap as well. So that's another thing we're finding, is that there is coffee sometimes, often, like NGP, the National Greening Project, has embarked on programs where they plant coffee trees in municipalities in the thousands. Like from what I understand, 24,000 per municipality. But because buyers are not being specific that we want Philippine coffee, if Vietnam comes along with a cheaper price, we're not going to buy Philippine coffee. So those coffees will not get harvested by effect because no one really specifically wants them. So it's a repeating story, at least for us, that we have these trees, but we didn't take care of them. We got them in early 2000s. But we fed them to our goat, we fed them to our carabao because no one's going to buy them anyway.
Yeah.
Right? But we do want them. We're just not saying it often enough that we want it. Or that's
All
my
right.
experience.
So let's ask the tough question. Why is Philippine coffee so expensive? Why is Vietnam half the price? Why?
Well, I think basically it's cost of production. Since our production is really low, our farmers have to sell them at a higher price in order to have some sort of profit for their produce. So again, I think it's all about that cycle that Kido mentioned, that all of us, even the consumers, are part of this value cycle. I don't like to call this a value chain because it's just one way. It's a value cycle.
That's
so
true.
For the consumers, we also, it is I think one of the responsibilities of the consumers is to also want and to appreciate the coffees and hopefully to give feedback. I think that's the most important part, to give feedback on how's this origin from this area in the Philippines, what do they think about it. I think that's very important because it creates that community again, wherein the buyers will have that demand for Philippine coffee in the future. So not a lot of our farmers in the farm level have those capabilities in processing these coffees to create a high quality coffee. A lot of them have limited equipment, limited training, limited knowledge in processing coffee. So I think as coffee processors, as those who communicate directly with the community, we also have to make extra efforts in educating these communities on how to produce quality coffees, not just in volume, but we also have to consider the quality of it so that people would actually demand for Philippine coffee.
In addition to what Kido and Raf has said, like for one, just to give you an idea, our harvest last year is only at 20% of what we previously harvested. So that's how low it was. And one of the many reasons...
Okay, go.
All right. One of the many reasons, of course, is climate change. Biologically, coffee only produces fruits when it is subjected to a certain weather pattern, right? So it needs a season of drought and then rain. But what we've been noticing all over the world is that there's consistent drought, no rain, so there's no initiation of flowering. And for the Philippines, there's continuous rain and no drought for some seasons. So this changing in climate patterns really affects the productivity of coffee. And this is not just in the Philippines. In Panama, for example, we were told by some producers that they only harvested about 10 to 20% as well. And in Brazil, they were affected by the frost, which also affected the international production. And that's why the price of coffee is going up. Because we, as consumers, don't stop consuming coffee, which is a good thing. Again, in addition to what Raf has said, that the farmers don't have much capacity to process it in a certain quality, I also see that there's not much support, financial support to the farmers. Coffee is an agricultural business. And for any agricultural crop, it takes time for it to return your investment. For coffee, it's 3 to 5 years. For example, I'm a farmer and I wanted to venture into coffee farming. I would need financial capacity to plant, maintain, and then eventually harvest my coffee in 5 years. That's a lot of money. And if you're talking about smallholder farmers, I would rather put that money in buying food and other basic necessities rather than investing that into a farm. And so, parang, we have land. If you go all over the Philippines, we have so much land. Bukidnon has so much land. Sultan Kudarat has so much land. I mean, we can even grow Robusta in La Union, for example. It's just we don't have that financial capacity. And compared to Vietnam, KO, I guess what we're missing in the Philippines is that government push, right? Support financially, right? To to increase the productivity in the country. That's the only way that we can maintain and sustain the demand and the volume for coffee.
So if you guys know anyone in government, please have them talk to these guys because they know what's going on the ground.
Yeah. I think that speaking and working with government is an inevitable part of the process. I do think that ultimately we have a management problem insofar as how food production is done, and I'll say that till the cows come home. Like, I think that we as an industry, we as food and bev professionals need to start saying that our government is letting us down in terms of food production, and we need to be demanding better, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. And if somebody gets in trouble for saying that, we need to have their fucking back. Sorry, we have to have their back because it's not gonna change if the management doesn't get better, right? That's one for me, right? We need to make our voices heard as an industry and say, let's stop this BS, right? Let's start putting money where it needs to be put. Let's put real management on top of agriculture. I mean, I'm serious, yeah. Right? And
management, not bureaucracy.
Right. And to be honest, the people I speak with most, there's many great people in government at the very local level. These are a lot of these people are champions. They're locals. They're relatives with the farmers that produce this crop. They're working in local agriculture, local trade.
They grew up there.
BPI. They speak the language, but because there is a brain drain at the top, to be frank, we're not seeing the money get to where it needs to go, right? And that to me is the first problem. That's at the top. Now at the bottom level, like I said earlier, we need to stabilize their income. Like Tere was saying, okay, I want to plant coffee. One day I want to be able to sell something that's 1,000 a kilo. That's not a far stretch for a coffee producer. However, there's 3 to 5 years before I get the first kilo done, right? What do I do in the meantime? And I think that, again, it speaks into a very complex part of the discussion around climate change. We need to diversify farms. We need to find income for them on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis so that they have capital for that annual harvest. We need to support their other crops. Like Tere was offloading citrus fruits last week. Like, does she need to do that?
Lemons.
Yeah, no.
Lemons. Yeah.
No and yes. Like, no, because you're in the coffee business, but yes, because these people produce other things. And actually, that gives us a clue into the future of farming. Like, maybe it's a more diverse agricultural setup. Maybe it's agroforestry. So in La Union, the latest thing that we're doing is supplying tomatoes produced by coffee farmers to BGC and Makati restaurants. So we have a weekly shipment of tomatoes from a coffee farming community. And this is a pro bono thing that El Union does with a little asterisk. Now, please take care of your coffee. And if you take care of it, we will also buy that. And we need to start thinking, I think, as an F&B industry, holistically, right? Not single-mindedly. Like, monocropping is for the past. Also, having a one-track mind about food and coffee is for the past. We have to have a diverse approach to it. We have a complex lens in our approach to coffee. Like, if I'm buying coffee, okay, what is the health of this community that's producing coffee? Who is, like, if it's Calzada, for example, I know that Tere is on the ground there, like 300 plus days a year, making sure that this community is healthy, productive, selling its other produce. So I'm more inclined to buy from a company like that. And we're trying to do the same as well in La Union, to enable farmers to sell not just coffee, and not just sell to us, but to others, so that when it comes time to sell coffee, we have something to buy because they had the money to produce it. You know what I mean? It can be quite complex, right?
Yeah, it is complex, but there is math to it, right? Like, you can take, say, the agricultural minimum wage for a region right? Break it down, multiply it by the entire year, break that down, right? Versus the amount of coffee that they can harvest, right? So if one person can harvest 8 kilos of coffee in a day, right? And the harvest is only 100 days, that person is only taking in 8,000 kilos of coffee. You need to divide the total agricultural minimum wage of the year by 8,000. That's a minimum that they have to make for those kilos, right? So there is math, right? It's just that no one's bothering to do the math. You get what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, that's a. We should have talked about this in May.
I know, right? All right. So let's talk about this. Now, what we've covered mostly is that there is a way you can vote with your purchases, right? There are great companies right here in BGC. Bose very much has been buying and serving a variety of great Philippine coffees. I had the pleasure of interviewing the founder of Bose, Steve Benitez, on Let's Coffee. That's on our YouTube page, youtube.com/HoneycombManila. We talk about a lot of coffee and a lot of Jordan sneakers, if you guys are interested. I had the pleasure of talking to Tere there as well. Bose was saying that they have investments also in the farm level, also with you guys. So if you guys want to be able to support those coffees today, head over to that booth. And it does make an impact. Know that your purchases do make an impact on day-to-day basis. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the other kinds of coffees that we have here in the Philippines. Because, Arabica gets a lot of love. But what about what's known as Barako? What about Liberica, Excelsa, which is a little complicated to discuss these days, and Robusta? The kind of the elephant in the room. You said we can plant Robusta. How should people be feeling about that? Because we've gotten all this Western media that's told us that Robusta is the bad coffee, right? Our cafe serves 100% Arabica. And how do we face that without going to war with it? Raf?
I think, of course, here in our company, in Curve, actually, we want to promote higher quality species. So we call them species, Robusta, Arabica, even Liberica, actually. So actually, one of the first steps that actually helped Robusta gain more popularity is the PCQC, or the Philippine Coffee Quality Competition. So this is held usually during April, May, wherein coffee producers from the different parts of the Philippines submit their coffee beans, and they get graded, and then they get graded by a panel of judges, and then of course they are sold in an auction. So I think that's one of the steps the communities are taking in order to help improve the quality of Robusta. So I think Robusta has this connotation of being instant coffee, bad coffee, or somewhat subpar as compared to Arabica coffees. But in actuality, Robusta coffees have really nice characteristics. So some Robustas have actually a floral taste, fruity taste, that you wouldn't find in like the usual Robustas that you think or see in coffee shops. So I think it's all about education. I think people still have that stigma or when it comes to different species, such as Barako. So I think Barako is well known for their strong, dark roasted taste, especially in Batangas. Because I think Barako is grown a lot there in Batangas. But when you taste, I don't know if a lot of people here love Barako. I like Barako, even with its dark, rich taste. However, when you try it in a different form, for example, when you process it correctly, you help the farmers process them, you roast them to a medium light level, and you taste it. It actually tastes sweet, it tastes fruity. It's another option. It's another alternative for that usually strong, dark Barako that you have. So I think it's more of exposure, and it's the responsibility of us processors and roasters to spread the word to the people that we have these kinds of coffees, that it's not closed in a box that this Robusta should be strong, dark, or this Barako should be strong or dark. It can be a variety of flavors and profiles that you can get from different processors. So I think that's our responsibility as roasters, as coffee producers, is to just give the knowledge to people, educate them when it comes to these types of coffees.
Just to add to that, worldwide, the most produced coffee is Arabica. But in the Philippines, it's different. We're producing more Robusta. And that's primarily because for the longest time, the buyer of coffee in the Philippines are only looking for Robusta. So if you go south, there's actually a lot of Robusta, and they're actually just starting to plant Arabica. And because of that, our notion of Robusta is really, oh, it's instant coffee. And because it's instant coffee, it's cheap. And farmers, as well as, consumers think it's cheap. Farmers are then taught that it's cheap because of the value of it. But like Raf said,
But there's no reason.
no reason.
There's no reason for it to be cheaper because it's really good.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the longest time, before the specialty movement happened in the Philippines, everything was processed commercially because it serves a certain market, right? And I agree with Raf that in saying that our responsibility really is to be more, let's just say, picky. Diba? Parang we should demand better quality. And in demanding for quality, then we should also be prepared to pay more. And that trickles back to the farmers. And then, kasi even when we started out, farmers were like, oh, kasi sabi nila this is this quality lang, and can only be sold at this price. So farmers are also conditioned to think that way. But us, as the consumers, buyers, retailers, have actually the capacity to change that mindset. And so I guess that's true for Liberica and Excelsa, who had this bad rep for the longest time. So yeah, that's for me.
I think to add what Teres said, we've had this encounter with farmers at one of our farms. We had them taste coffee with a lot of defects. So it had a lot of insect damage. A few had full black, full sour, some of the defects common in coffee. And when they tasted that, and then we had them taste specialty coffee, the one processed more carefully, and they actually preferred the one with defects. So
Wow.
you can see there the disconnect between what they perceive as quality as to what we perceive as quality. So I think, as Teres said, before the specialty coffee movement, I think they were taught to think that way. So I think a lot of them were exploited into thinking that, okay, what you're producing is actually good enough. And we can pay you at a cheaper price for a higher volume.
So they were told, stop here, so we will pay you this much.
Yeah.
And if they were told, keep going, what they would end up with was a product that's worth 10x.
Yes.
At
And
the
why would a
farm
big
level.
corporation want it to go? Why would a big corporation want their cost of goods to go 10 times more?
So
Why
ultimate-
would they want it 400 a kilo when they can get it for a fraction of the?
So
yeah.
ultimately, what we're
Yeah.
talking about here is the decolonization of coffee.
Well, I think that we definitely need to smuggle that language into global South coffee companies. That we have to decolonize our minds as consumers. Why do we think that Robusta is cheap? Because probably a Western company told you that for the very reason that we just said. They want to keep the price down so that they can make the profit in the middle and sell an unsuspecting consumer a lower grade product for a higher price, and then they make the profit. And we need to, that's why this festival needs to platform and stage independent local companies that are championing this cause. Because I have nothing against, there's no pure path through capitalism, right? There's no dogma, there's no pure path. But there are those of us that have the capacity to process the discussion. We need to lead the way. We need to start, like if you can afford to spend 180 pesos on a filter coffee and you like it and you connect with the story, you have to, right?
Yeah.
And you should not complain that it's expensive because that was the labor of a real person that made it good. And your decision can actually change how coffee is produced. And I think that as consumers, most of us here would be consumers. Those are the realities on the ground. That if we don't have you at the end to catch the ball, there's no point even throwing the ball or being fit enough to throw the ball at you, right? Because I could just be in another industry altogether. I could plant rice and at least feed my family. I could plant root crops and be ready for a drought or like a bad spell. But we're encouraging people to plant local coffee. So we better be ready to put our money there and say, we're going to support it and we're going to define this for ourselves, right? Because people say Robusta is not good and it's good. They like the defects and that. These are all very subjective metrics. They're the product of arbitration. They're the product of saying, okay, we like complexity. Complexity, good. Diba? Earthy, bad. Like taste black, bad. Taste mold, bad. Yes, that's true. I don't like the taste of mold. I don't like the taste of bugs, right? But there is an attribute to a good, cleanly made, properly processed Robusta that might be modest, but it's still really, really good and worth every peso that you pay for it, right? So we need to start questioning the messages that we've got. Oh, this cafe serves only 100% Arabica. Why would that company say that, right? Why would they say that? Are they just being a parrot of a big coffee company in another country that is very disconnected from a global South narrative that we are all faced with every day, right? And we need to assert that voice, I think, as Philippine coffee because we are a producing country. And frankly, Europe, Japan, the US, while they're amazing consumers, they're not a producing company. And there's things that they don't understand about quality that we understand. And I actually learned this from Hiro, who's a Japanese Q grader. He calls it total quality, not just cup quality. The quality of the whole socioeconomic story needs to be good. And I love that concept, that specialty is total quality. It's transparency, it's ethics, it's supporting companies that actually ask those questions and don't reduce it to just numbers, right? So,
all right. So on that note, I'm gonna ask you guys one last question because we have to wrap up. Everyone can go to lunch. The question is this: what does great Philippine coffee taste like? And before you answer, you think about that. The reason I ask that question is because we seem to be getting told a lot what coffee is supposed to taste like, right? The entire system of grading is based on this thing that they came up with in America and in Europe as a way of standardizing production for buyers, right? Assuming that they were the buyers. So they said, okay, here's some sheets, here's some charts, we're gonna train you guys so that you can give a number score and we will buy against that number score, right? Develop the coffee for export. So we're now making coffee for their taste. But we here drink a lot of coffee in the Philippines. We are a major coffee consuming country. You know how I know? There are 20,000 of you who showed up yesterday in this park that no one's ever really been to, right? So you guys love coffee, you guys know. We make the coffee here, we grow it here. We don't have to ship it, right? Our baristas are some of the best in the world. You go to the World Championship, there are like 4 Filipinos
when
in the finals.
Sly was in the World Championship, so he was the Philippine team, but then the UAE champion was Filipino, and the Austrian champion was Filipino. So we had a Filipino block.
Yeah, the Dubai Brewers Cup champion this year is a Filipino,
yeah,
right? He is the champion. He's a green buyer with Archers. And so that's my point. Maybe we can have a say on what it tastes like. And we can say, this is good. And we're gonna be the ones.
And here's why. And we have to be as good as them at defining it. That's the thing, is that with that assertion comes a responsibility on our part as a community to be the best that we can be. And that's what I love about weekends like this, is that we're challenging one another to compete and to be better. Because we can't just say, we're going to define it, but we didn't step up, right?
Got it.
If we're going to say, okay, we get to define qualities, again, then let's be because the global north has great coffee people, don't get me wrong. They just have a different context.
Yes.
They just have a different perspective and experience. And we can learn from one another.
Yes.
And that's what we're all about. We're not spitting them out. We're not saying we don't need America or the Nordics or Singapore.
Absolutely. But
Yeah, we also have something to say.
What I'm saying is that I react when I open a cookbook from the West and it tells me how to make adobo.
Right. Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
right? So yeah, we're out of time. So let's go from here to there. What should coffee taste? What does Philippine coffee taste like?
Philippine coffee should taste like Philippine soil and Philippine communities and what's growing there. Yeah, I remember you'd given me something from Nueva Vizcaya, and I was like, wow. And you said tinola, right? And it tasted gingery and sayote and maybe a little bit of tropical, like jackfruit or something, like what the West would call tropical fruit. I thought maybe a bit of jackfruit. And I think that what our land tastes like, let's look at the communities around it and not be ashamed to say, yeah, I like the taste of sayote in my coffee, as a matter of fact, because I love tinola.
No, and Filipinos put coffee on rice.
Yeah,
So
I
it
mean,
makes sense.
Savory Robusta is a beautiful savory flavor. Right? We don't have enough time for that. But for me, it tastes like our earth and the communities and that it comes from and the things that we normally eat. It's kind of related. It's all connected underground. That's my wrong opinion, but it tastes like us.
We can all have wrong
Tastes like
opinions.
home.
Ref.
For me, I think it's also subjective, basically. We can have coffees here that would taste like similar to Ethiopian coffees that are grown here in the Philippines, or some that are similar to Sumatran coffees. But in the end, it's all subjective. What's important is that good sustainable. So can we produce sustainable, good quality coffee? I think that's what our consumers should also think about, is that, okay, this year I'll get this great coffee from, let's say, Atok. However, next year will I get the same quality coffee? Maybe not, maybe yes. So I think we also have to consider that, in the sense that we have to continuously create sustainable, good quality coffee, not just any type of coffee with specific flavor profiles, specific characteristics. It's all about uplifting the community, uplifting our farmers, our baristas, our consumers, our roasters, the whole value cycle of coffee. It's traceability, knowing where the coffees came from. It's not just putting a name to a coffee product and saying that's from a specific origin. We have to know which farm it came from, who processed it, and we hope that the following year they produce the same quality coffee. So I think that's the whole cycle of it, the traceability.
So your
cycle.
answer is Philippine coffees taste like ethics.
Yes.
Oh, got it.
That's what we're lacking here in the Philippines. So, yeah.
So I agree with Kiddo and Raf. If you taste Philippine coffee blind, meaning you don't know where it came from, people mistake it for coffees from Africa. Some people say it's from Costa Rica. Some people mistake it for Brazil or, any other origin. So what I think is, like Filipinos, we're so easy to adapt. Give us something, we'll work it out. So if you need this to be tasting like this, kaya namin yan. Diba? Pero for me, what's the great coffee, Philippine coffee, is something that would make you feel good drinking it. So not just taste, not just the quality because, it tastes like Ethiopian, right? No. Parang the coffee that would make you feel this is truly Filipino, right? This is our coffee and we're proud of it. So and being proud of it doesn't mean it's just the quality. So like Raf said, it's ethical, it's sustainable, and all of these aspects. So that for me is great Philippine coffee.
Great answer. My answer is that Philippine coffee is sweet, right? And whatever that means to you, could be ethics, it could be fruit, it could be memories, honestly. The people that you have the coffee with, the people who you have made the coffee with, right? I always say being a barista saved my life. I have personality defects, right? That service has helped me with, right? And making great coffee and helping people has helped me with. Tara, what's your role at Philippine Coffee Guild?
I am currently the interim chair of the Philippine Coffee Guild. So let me talk about the Philippine Coffee
Take
Guild.
a minute for that.
Thank you. So the Philippine Coffee Guild is a memberships-based non-profit organization. What we aim to be is to be the community of coffee industry players that would push solutions, find solutions together to answer all of the issues that we just raised today. And I'm pretty sure there would be issues that would be raised by the next group of panelists later on. And that's something that we really want to achieve as an industry. Because we've been doing this for the last, 10, some 20 years. And nabibitin tayo sa result. And so this is an industry-led organization that really wants to be the voice. To say, hey, we need this and we want you to do your job.
Is there a membership role for consumers in Philippine Coffee
Yes,
Guild?
everybody's welcome. If you consume coffee, you can be part of the Philippine Coffee Guild. So if you want to learn
know
about...
that your membership money goes towards ethics like these.
Yes. So a lot of our programming will be, again, we're a non-profit organization, so a lot of the programming will come back to all of the industry players. Pero we know that the biggest part of the industry are consumers like you guys. So we welcome you or we encourage you to be part of the Philippine Coffee Guild.
And I'm not a member of the guild yet, but as a member of the coffee media, it's a little bit more complicated. But they do have, for those of you who are interested in farm level things, they do have the Philippine Coffee Fiesta, which is upcoming, and there are many aspects to it. Some are like this, some are involve music and art. But specifically, I want to talk about the last leg really quickly of the Philippine Coffee Fiesta, which is, they're calling it the forest bathing leg. Essentially, it's farm visits. So if you've never been to a coffee farm and you'd like to experience it, please approach Tere after the event or after the panel, and you guys can ask about that and find out how you can contribute your visits, contribute directly to the farmers, and it lets you get an eye on what's happening out there. If you're going to take a hike out to Sagada or climb one of the mountains here, and you like that kind of thing, it's a good way to do that with a very specific purpose, right? And with that, I'd like to thank you guys all for joining us today. Let's hear for our panelists, Tere, Raf, and Kiddo, our heroes of Philippine coffee. Thank you for listening to or watching Daily Drink Magazine's Daily Drink Dialogue. If you enjoyed this content, do follow along on the web at www.dailydrinkmag.com or Daily Drink Mag on Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube at HoneycombManila and tell a friend. We appreciate your patronage. Wish you good luck, good health, and great coffee. Peace.